So here I would love to, we are kind of switching gears. We talked a lot about what products we have in the kitchen, what products we buy for the kitchen, but we really only now in the closing quarter hour of our conversation tonight are talking about what kitchen is for. So there are lots of resources that over the years, over the existence of AWG, and in fact, next year AWG is celebrating our 30th anniversary. So from the start of AWG in 1993, one of AWG's very first reports was on pesticides in the diets of children. Now, the situation is a little bit better since 1993 because some of the really toxic pesticides, there has been a little bit of progress about getting those pesticides on the market. But there are still a lot of pesticides that are legally, meaning with full consent of the Environmental Protection Agency, federal agency that regulates pesticides in the US, that those pesticides are used on the field and they end up on our produce. So the AWG publishes lots of resources. We have AWG Shopper's Guide, which looks at pesticide residue testing in different types of produce. That is a testing that US Department of Agriculture conducts. So that's not a testing commissioned by AWG. So AWG also has some of our own testing reports. But our AWG Shopper's Guide, which lists, as you can see here, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, it basically takes that vast data set generated by the USDA or US Department of Agriculture and looks at which types of produce have the highest levels of pesticide. And also, as related to that work, AWG is focusing on some of the pesticides where the available toxicity data really show that those pesticides simply should not be used. So I'm sure everybody now wants to know, oh, canceling pesticide in kale, what is that? It's a pesticide called Dactyl, not a household name, unlike glyphosate or Roundups that probably many audience members have heard. I actually do have a little bit of good news. After years of advocacy by AWG and other groups, just this year, the EPA has announced that they are going to move to phase out this pesticide Dactyl. It has some other names, again, not common names, to finally phase it out, meaning to require that this pesticide should no longer be used in the United States. Now, we can say we are almost there to get the pesticide. It's found on kale. Even like 2-3 years ago when AWG commissioned our own testing, we still saw it on kale. USDA testing saw that pesticide. So AWG has been submitting petitions to EPA, writing technical comment letters, organizing online advocacy. Our organization does a lot with our online supporters, basically saying that while avoiding pesticides in general is good, but there are some pesticides which are should be the first ones to phase out. So on this particular one, Dactyl, I am cautiously optimistic. I am hopeful that we will see a phase out of the pesticide. That will not be the end of the bed. And that's why WG kind of creates this shopper's guide ranking different types of produce. But also here, I would love to stop so that we can go to questions. I would love to stop with a dose of realism. Is eating fruits and vegetables is essential. It's essential for everybody. It's especially essential for people who may have received a cancer diagnosis or perhaps are going through treatment. But good diet is essential. Any vegetable, any fruit is better than no fruit. But again, when the opportunity to purchase organic, whether economic opportunity or the simple availability of organic produce in the place where one lives, when that opportunity presents itself, AWG does find that that is a better option, especially for produce that is high in pesticides. So I'm sure we'll have lots of questions there. I will close with this closing slide. Our shopping choices matter. All our conversation tonight was about this. AWG also has a YouTube channel with lots of fun videos by AWG scientists, AWG policy experts who talk about these issues. So if you would like to learn more about our work, you can also visit AWG's YouTube channel.
Thanks, Olga. I just want to remind people that you know, especially this time of year, often there'll be local farmer markets. There's ways to buy some of this produce where they are not using pesticides. So always a great option. I know there's always questions about the best way to clean your vegetables, fruits and vegetables. So is it just water, or do you recommend something else?
So first of all, that's really a great question, because one does see a lot of products out there which talk about how they basically, you know, cleaning products. As best I can tell, that's a low concentration of detergents, and many people enjoy using those, especially for washing fruit. An interesting aspect of about those types of produce cleaners that one sees is that the same limitation applies to them as to the cleaning products we spoke about. I am not particularly concerned about toxicity, but I am concerned that do those cleaning products fully disclose the ingredients? So that's kind of the challenge, whether if one chooses to use those basically mild detergent type products, after then rinsing with water completely is truly essential. Comes back to, you know, water wash and peel is really what I would recommend.
Thank you. There was a question, if you buy your own plants to grow, is there a benefit to buying ones that have been grown organically, or is it good enough not to add chemicals yourself to grow them? Do you have a recommendation for that?
That's a great question indeed. Well, whether buying seedlings, buying seeds, as there are many options, both conventional and organic, I would go with realism. It's better to grow anything, so that if you have your own seedlings. But I would mention, especially for people who live in urban settings, perhaps starting a community garden, perhaps gardening in one's own backyard. An actual place where I would recommend it is checking if one can test the soil. Because, I mean, the soil, for example, may have some of the heavy metal contaminations from years past. Many people, especially in urban settings, opt for raised beds so as to use fresh soil produced by organic methods, so as to avoid that where I may have my little plot of land, that land may look good, but it may have legacy contamination from 40 years ago. So that's where I would actually focus my effort, is to make sure that the soil that one uses is right. Once the soil is right, avoiding synthetic pesticides and finding a way to fight those pests, those will be the next steps.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. And there are really good fertilizers you can get. I've been doing a lot to sort of make my soil and my raised beds healthier. I always look at that dirty dozen list, and it always makes me really sad because, you know, apples and some of the fruits and vegetables I think people like the most. So those would be the ones, if you're going to buy organic, to try to buy those on the dirty dozen list, right? And so you can prioritize because it is more expensive. Is that what you suggest?
That is very much what we would suggest, and that our DWG advice is always twofold. Eating fruits and vegetables, number one. If one can afford, then buying organic from the dirty dozen, the produce with highest pesticide levels. That is step two. But step one is first still going ahead and buying fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, frozen ones are not a bad choice. And because very often, you know, I just might not find the fresh what I need, or I might not be able to afford that fresh option. Frozen is a fresh choice because it's still minimal processing. Unlike, for example, canned, what some of our grandmothers were fans of, I would recommend avoiding cans. Frozen is actually not bad. Still going for frozen organic is my recommendation.
Thank you. So someone heard that spinach is problematic for pesticides, even organic. Is that true?
So if anybody has tried to grow spinach or those soft leafy vegetables, pests love them. I have. My produce did not look nice. And so with spinach, some of the problematic pesticides in spinach is insecticides and other kind of soft, like, for example, some of the greens. So indeed, spinach is a very good green to buy organic. Now, I take it that the question from the audience talks about the fact that there are pesticidal type products that are used in organic industry. That is exactly right. But those types of products, because, you know, pests will eat any spinach, organic or conventional. but the type of products which organic industry use are very tightly reviewed and regulated by the National Organic Standards Board, and their impact is like minuscule relative to the impact of synthetic pesticides, which is huge and very negative.
Great.
I think we can probably just take one more question, Lynn.
So there's a question in regards to how can someone, if someone is gardening, how they can check the soil.
So a good question. That's a great question, since I did mention that I would look for a local lab. For example, very often like local universities would have soil researchers because right now many municipalities are supporting the urban gardening levels. For example, DC has a whole annual conference, Roots DC. So that's where those efforts come together. So for every community, the answer may be different, but I would think starting with either municipal programs in support of urban gardening or the local university or like community college. That's where I would start looking.